Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball tutorial series where we take a look at some of the inner workings of the game and try to ultimately come up with some recommendations and suggestions that hopefully will enable you to enjoy the game more and hopefully also be more successful when you're playing it. And what we're looking at this time around is results from the development lab, which was a exciting new feature in OOTP 25 and is going to be enhanced further in the upcoming OOTP 26 release, which is less than 2 weeks away as I'm recording this. Just to highlight for viewers what we're doing, we have tracked over a decade of results from the development lab in Out of the Park Baseball 25 in my long-running playthrough series with the Oakland Athletics. And if you haven't checked out that series and you're interested in hopefully learning a little bit, having a little fun along the way, and some real good interaction with the commenters, would appreciate it if you check that out if it's something that might be interesting to you. Definitely a good supplement to our tutorial series. The tutorial series is probably where you go to get the most specific thoughts from me on hopefully how to win at the game, but certainly watching me play the game over time also helpfully is entertaining and also helps people learn how to play the game better. But what we've been doing over the last many years of that playthrough is we expanded the development lab to the maximum of 20 slots per season so we could collect more data on how the development lab actually works. I believe the default is 6, and we were playing with that for the first several years of this playthrough. But as we decided we wanted to actually try to learn something, we decided to expand the development lab to those 20 slots so we could collect a lot more data. And as I noted on the previous slide, with the expected release of Out of the Park 26 less than 2 weeks away, seems like a good time to take a look at that data that we have been collecting over the last several months. We're going to break down the results by age, personality traits, and then some of the specific programs. But we're not going to look at results where the sample size was particularly small, so we're not going to go into all of the programs. There were some programs that we only ran a handful of times over the years that we've been looking at this, and didn't think that with those very small sample sizes, those results would be particularly useful. Similarly, when we get into looking at some of the age results, we didn't run a lot of development labs with players in their teens or the 30s. And quite honestly, when we're looking at this first slide, which looks at player age at program completion, we had the largest sample sizes for players aged 22 through 26. So those are probably the results to take most seriously. And my hypothesis going in was that there probably would be some age at which the probability of success in the development lab was the highest. And what we kind of found was ages 22 to 24 had the highest success rates. Made simple coloring on all the slides we're going to be using here. The dark green is an outstanding result, light green is successful, yellow, no improvement, and red was a poor result in the development lab. Those are the 4 different results that can take place. So whether you want to think of this as stoplights, green, yellow, red, or profitability, green is successful, red is not successful, hopefully the coloring is somewhat intuitive and helps the understanding. So of the middle of this graph where we had the most data points, and these were generally 30, 35 data points for all of these ages, you can see that the overall success rate highest in that 22 to 24 age range. Earlier in the 20s, we saw lower success rates. The results in the late 20s were admittedly mixed. Looks like age 28, you can have a lot of successful programs, but no outstanding programs. But as I noted earlier, the sample sizes, even when we get out to the late 20s or the early 20s, are more 10 to 15 kind of samples. So I don't think those are going to be as statistically relevant. After thinking about age, the next thing we thought about was some personality traits and whether there's any significant differences with players with different personalities and their success in the development lab. And that's what we'll look at next. Turning to work ethic, this was a surprising result to me. I really thought going in that players with a higher work ethic would have development lab results that were better, but we certainly don't see that between players with high work ethic and players with an average or neutral work ethic. Those of you who have followed me over the years will know that I'm very focused on player personalities. So unfortunately, there were no low work ethic players in the hundreds of samples of players I put through the development lab. My hypothesis is that lower work ethic players may have less success, but as I noted, nobody with that personality trait in my actual sample, unfortunately. And the other personality traits I do look at, we do see a broader range of personality types. Turning to intelligence, similar to work ethic, not an obvious strong correlation between intelligence and the development lab results. We did see with the low intelligence player a somewhat lower rate of outstanding results, but that sample size was admittedly much smaller than the high intelligence and average intelligence cohorts. So unfortunately, in the first two personality types we looked at, can't say that I saw anything particularly interesting. Fortunately, that changes here. When we move to adaptability, finally, something interesting in the data. The poor results definitely increase as adaptability gets lower, and the overall success rate for low adaptability players appears materially different than for the neutral and high adaptability players. And because of this result, my hypothesis is we might see something similar for work ethic, although as I noted, I didn't actually have any low work ethic players, so that remains purely a hypothesis. Turning to leadership, and no material differences in the results between high and average or neutral leadership, but similar to adaptability, the overall success rate does decline and the number of poor results seems to increase with low leadership players. So that may be something to think about when you consider personality types, and if you're running with only 6 development lab spots and they're even more precious, thinking about some of those guys with negative personality traits and potentially considering not putting them through the lab might be something that ultimately helps your results on the margins over time. Now, with personality traits behind us, we will take a look at some of the specific programs. And again, we're only going to get into 6 programs here because there were a lot where we didn't have a significant sample size, so I didn't necessarily think the results would be that interesting. We'll look at 3 pitching programs and 3 hitting programs, starting out the pitching programs with the improved control program. Generally a medium difficulty program. Have seen some variation among various players over the many seasons that I've been playing, but typically this shows up as a medium difficulty program. Our overall success rate was pretty good at 67%, and no poor results in the improved control program. We compare that to another medium difficulty program on the pitching side, increased pitch movement, and our success rate dropped to 36%, and we did have some poor results in there. And when we had poor results in the increased pitch movement program, they generally involved a 1 mile an hour loss in the pitcher's velocity. So not a critical thing, but certainly on the margin, it's something that's going to make your pitcher's stuff a little less good, which is never a good thing. Turning on to the final pitching program where we had a large number of samples to look at, and that's the secondary pitch improvement. This is generally an easy program, and you can see that the overall success rate increased to 78%. Poor results, though, certainly still happened 8% of the time, and they typically involved a stamina decrease or an increase in the player's injury proneness, which are both certainly relevant and significant. And outstanding results typically involved a 5 to 10 point increase in the current and potential rating for the pitch that was worked on in the development lab. Moving on to some batting specific programs. Quality of contact, generally a hard program. And we saw an overall success rate of just 34% in quality of contact. Poor results typically involved a decline in both home run power and the player's eye. So a pretty negative result when we did have those poor results. Fortunately, only 6% of the time they happened. And the outstanding results typically involved a 5-point increase in current and potential BABIP ratings. Another hard-hitting program is the Generate Bat Speed program. Overall success rate there was lower than we had in the contact program, only a 23% outstanding and successful combined. And we had more poor results there than in the Improve Contact program. A poor result in the Generate Bat Speed program typically involved a decline in the Avoid Strikeouts rating, and an outstanding result typically involved a 5 to 10 point increase in the current and potential power. We did actually have one circumstance where we got a 15-point increase, but I wouldn't call that typical since it was only one time when we saw that good a result in terms of the player's power. And last but not least, among the batting specific programs is plate discipline. This is a medium difficulty program, so we would anticipate a higher success rate than the contact or bat speed programs, and we certainly saw that with a combined 61% of these programs resulting in an outstanding or a successful result. Poor results for plate discipline typically involve a 5-point decline in the Avoid Strikeout or plate discipline rating, while outstanding results generally are going to give you a 5 to 10 point increase in the current and potential eye ratings. So last but certainly not least, we're going to hopefully summarize our findings and what I think are the key takeaways from the work we did in the development lab over these past many seasons with the Oakland A's. I think that ultimately ages 22 to 24 might be a sweet spot to maximize the probability of having a successful program. Personality-wise, as we touched upon earlier, might want to consider avoiding players with low adaptability and leadership, as the probability of poor results in those programs was higher in the data we saw. And as we talked about, my hypothesis is it may be the same thing for the work ethic, but because I'm such a personality slob and I won't let any lazy, low work ethic guys into my organization generally, I didn't have anyone go through the hundreds of development lab programs that we ran to actually get data on that, unfortunately. In what is going to be the least surprising program, the programs that OOTP defines as easier have higher success rates. Good to know. It does seem, though, through our findings that there can be some different levels of success rates among programs with the same ratings, which is actually good to see. You would hope that when they're saying low, medium, hard, very hard, that there's some gradation among those in the actual programming that goes into this. And among the medium difficulty pitching programs, we had more success with improved control than increased pitch movement. All else being equal, maybe focus on those control programs a little more. Among the hard difficulty hitting programs, we had more success with quality of contact than generate bat speed. And again, if it comes down to your final spot and you've got a player who needs to work on both, maybe on the margins, put them into the quality of contact program rather than the generate bat speed program. And last but not least, just a final reminder, this was all done with Out of the Park Baseball 25. There are going to be some enhancements coming to the development lab in the new version of Out of the Park Baseball when OOTP 26 comes out in less than 2 weeks. And my expectation is that some of the information that we think we're taking away could change in the new version. I wouldn't think it's going to be material. I would think that things are going to change just a little bit. But all else being equal, I think it's a interesting thing to think about. So when all is said and done, spent a lot of time tracking and collecting data and compiling it. Wish there was something more revolutionary that I was able to share from these results, but hopefully still something interesting in here that ultimately helps you with your decision making as to how to use the development lab in Out of the Park Baseball, and ultimately hopefully helps you win some more games. Until our next tutorial, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.